The room was vast, an ancient hall floating in the political heart of the Galactic Concord. Marble-like floors polished with light from a dying blue star shimmered beneath the feet of hundreds of species. Creatures of every shape and sound sat at the great table. Tentacled beings from the outer veil, crystalline forms humming softly, gas cloud organisms drifting gently in containment fields. And seated at the far end, apart from the rest, were the humans. Ambassador Rhys Callahan sat upright, his hands folded neatly on the sleek metal desk in front of him. He wore the standard Earth Federation uniform, dark blue with silver lining, medals long stripped away after years of diplomatic coldness. The air was stiff with tension, not just political tension. Something far heavier, something final. He could feel their stares, dozens of species watching with a strange mixture of fear and disbelief. Humanity had always been unpredictable, volatile, and emotional, but they were also brilliant, persistent, and terrifying when cornered. That was what made them dangerous. That was why everyone feared this moment. "We've reviewed the proposal," Rhys said calmly, his voice echoing through the chamber thanks to universal translation nodes embedded in the ceiling. "And Earth declines." A wave of silence followed. Not even the chirping translators dared to speak. The Concord's high speaker, a skeletal, six-eyed creature known as Lectal of the 70 Suns, lifted a writhing hand. "Ambassador Callahan," Lectal hissed, "you are aware this agreement represents centuries of peace, that your refusal endangers the very fabric of our interstellar unity." Rhys looked up, his face was unreadable. "We are aware." Lectal's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Then why?" A long breath escaped Rhys' lips. He'd practiced this, rehearsed every word, but now that the moment had come, it felt heavier than he imagined. He glanced over at his aide, Captain Mir Han, a former combat pilot who now stood as Earth's silent witness to this farce. Her clenched jaw gave him the strength he needed. "You made peace without us," Rhys said. "You negotiated, you planned. You carved up star systems and resource lanes without Earth at the table. Then you presented it to us as a finished document, one that demanded we give up control of our colonies, relinquish our technologies, and open our borders to enforcement drones. You wanted us to agree to peace, but you didn't want us involved in building it." Murmurs spread across the chamber. Lectal raised a hand to quiet them. "This is the cost of unity," the alien said coldly. "No," Rhys replied, eyes darkening. "This is submission. And humanity has submitted before to tyrants, to empires. We know what it feels like to kneel. We've done it on Earth in our own history, but never again." The room tensed. One of the insectoid ambassadors, a sharp-jawed creature from the Kar-Hix swarm, buzzed a warning. "You would rather isolation than unity?" Rhys nodded. "If unity means obedience without respect, yes." A silence, heavier than before, wrapped the chamber. For a long time, no one spoke. The humans stood slowly. Chairs scraped against the floor, echoing like gunshots in a tomb. Rhys looked across the chamber once more. "You will regret this day. Not because we're walking away, but because you taught us that we don't belong here. You've made it clear, so we'll build our own future without you. Watch carefully. You'll see what humans become when they're alone." And then they turned, walked away from the table. No goodbyes, no handshakes, just silence. The galaxy watched in horror because they knew what came next. Humanity didn't need approval. They needed a reason. The silence of the chamber lingered long after the humans had left. Delegates exchanged uneasy glances. Their expressions, those that had eyes or faces to read, were a blend of disbelief and dread. Lectal sat motionless, his elongated fingers twitching ever so slightly. No one followed the humans. No one called after them. They all knew better. Outside, aboard the human delegation ship Resolute Dawn, Ree stared out into the void as Earth's twin moons glimmered far in the distance. The planet itself was no longer blue and green. Decades of atmospheric armor, satellite colonies, and urban sprawl had reshaped its colors. Gray rings of megacities wrapped around Earth's equator like iron scars. Yet it was still home. Captain Ham broke the silence in the cabin. We could have stayed longer, negotiated more, found some crack in the wall. Ree shook his head. There was no wall, just a cage painted in diplomacy and hung with the banners of peace. She sighed. So what now? We do what we've always done, he said. Survive. Alone if we have to. And this time without asking permission. Back on Earth, news of the walkout exploded like wildfire. Most civilians didn't understand the depth of what had just happened. Many thought it was political theater. Some thought it was foolishness. But a growing portion, especially among Earth's military, scientific community, and frontier colonies, understood perfectly. They'd been sidelined for years, ignored while aliens bickered over human inventions. Human colonies were taxed and inspected by conquered fleets. Human scientists had been accused of unauthorized advancements, while conquered approved species duplicated human tech under different names. Patents stolen, worlds claimed, pride diminished. And now they had finally said no. General Thomas Edelman stood in the control center of Lunar Command, watching the statement Ree had delivered play again on a dozen screens. So they're really doing it, the old soldier muttered. Walking away from the conquered, he turned to his second-in-command, Colonel Vera Shin. Get me the heads of Project Omen and Atlas Initiative. Tell them humanity's off the leash. Colonel Shin frowned. Sir, that's decades of black projects. Tech we're not even sure is stable. Thomas's smile was grim. We don't need stable. We need unstoppable. At the edge of the solar system, deep beyond Pluto's orbit, hidden stations that hadn't been activated in years blinked to life. Silent ships began powering their cores. AI constructs, once locked away after conquered mandates, were reawakened. Project Omen banned research into weaponized gravity wells, space-folding drive systems, and time-localized particle distortion was now authorized without limitation. The Atlas Initiative, a colonial expansion plan shelved by conquered treaties, was reinstated. Hundreds of frozen ships in the Kuiper Belt began thawing. Crews, volunteers, exiles, soldiers, and settlers were told one thing: humanity was done waiting. Back in conquered space, ripples of fear were growing. Reports filtered in from fringe systems, human cargo vessels refusing inspections, Earth's satellites encrypting all channels, lunar bases going dark to conquered monitoring, Mars weaponizing orbital arrays once promised to be purely scientific. Earth had withdrawn, but more than that, they were preparing. A distant species, the DRA, a race that had once tried to colonize Titan before Earth pushed them back, released a warning. Do not provoke them. Do not underestimate them. You've forgotten who they are. But the conquered didn't listen. Arrogance blinded them. Lechtel called an emergency summit, this time behind closed doors. The humans are activating forbidden technologies. If we do not intervene now, they will become a threat to us all. But they've not attacked anyone, said a soft-spoken Velian. They simply left. Lechtel hissed, his voice full of venom. That's the danger. When humans stop talking, when they stop asking for approval, it means they're about to do something terrible, something magnificent. And still, no one moved against them. Not yet. Because deep down, the galaxy remembered what had been buried for so long. Humanity never needed permission to conquer, only a reason. The first real sign that something had changed came 3 weeks after humanity's exit. In the border system of Zenthus 4, a minor trade hub under conquered control, 3 human freighters appeared without prior clearance. The station hailed them. No response. They initiated a standard interdiction. Within 2 minutes, the interdiction ship vanished from sensors. No explosion, no damage, just gone. The humans docked, unloaded cargo for a pre-approved human-run colony, then departed silently. The Concord issued an immediate order for investigation. What they didn't expect was the footage, a single fragment retrieved from the missing patrol vessel's black box. It showed the human freighter releasing a brief flash of pulsing white light before the feed cut. No heat signature, no kinetic impact, just pure spatial distortion. Earth had just demonstrated something terrifying. They had created a weapon that didn't kill. It erased. Rhys Callahan watched the news from his quarters aboard the Resolute Dawn, now orbiting Earth's sister station in the Epsilon Belt. He said nothing as Admiral Cito, head of Earth's newly unified military council, entered the room. "They're scared," Cito said simply. Rian nodded. "They should be. We've confirmed they're moving fleet assets to the outer colonies, preparing for something. Let them. We don't need their colonies." Rhys stood, turned to face the viewport. "We're building something better." Admiral Cito paused. "There's growing pressure from our own citizens, Rhys. People want to know what walking away means, what our end goal is." Rhys' eyes narrowed. "It means we stop pretending. It means we stop playing their game. It means humanity becomes who we were always meant to be. But if it comes to war—" "It won't," Rhys interrupted. "Not yet. They'll bluff, they'll threaten, but they won't fire the first shot. And if they do—" Rhys smiled faintly. "Then we show them what hell looks like." On Mars, underground factories that had once been dismantled under Concord inspection and were humming again. Mechs, sleek, towering bipedal war machines, were being reassembled from their sealed vaults. Not for defense, not for peacekeeping. For domination, if required. Humanity hadn't just been building weapons. They'd been preparing escape plans. Ships designed to go where Concord sensors couldn't reach. New quantum-laced communication channels that couldn't be intercepted. AI commanders who could control entire fleets without a single human pilot. This wasn't just about leaving the table. This was about building a new one and making sure no alien hand would ever rest on its surface. The whispers started to spread beyond Concord territory. On backwater mining colonies and neutral worlds, humans were becoming legends again. The ghosts of Earth, they were called. People who appeared, hacked systems, delivered medicine or weapons, then vanished. Some Concord allies started asking the forbidden question. What if humanity is right? What if we really don't need them? And while politicians debated, Earth moved on. On the far edge of mapped space, deep beyond the Kepler wastes, a fleet of human colony ships emerged. Hundreds of thousands of cryopods, artificial biomes, self-sustaining cities in metal husks. They named the flagship New Terra. They weren't just leaving the Concord behind. They were disappearing into the void beyond any alien influence. A new frontier, a new home, free from treaties, restrictions, and expectations, free from fear. Lechtel watched the reports with a growing knot of rage and panic. They are expanding faster than we predicted. Their technology defies models. They do not share data, do not respond to calls. They act as if we don't exist. An older ambassador, one of the few who remembered the early days of humanity's entry into the galactic fold, said softly, "Perhaps to them, we don't." And for the first time in millennia, the Concord began to panic. Not because they had lost a member, not because humanity had grown powerful, but because humanity no longer cared. The Concord did exactly what humanity expected. They tried to save face. In the weeks following the expansion of New Terra and the appearance of human tech the Concord couldn't explain, several Concord representatives reached out. Private channels, backdoor diplomats, even former human sympathizers within the bureaucracy. They wanted dialogue. They wanted a way back to the old order. They spoke of reconciliation, mutual benefit, shared governance. Rhys Callahan didn't even reply. He'd instructed every Earth diplomat, every AI envoy, every colonial liaison to ignore such messages, not out of pride, but out of necessity. There was no returning to the table. Not after the lies, the exploitation, the centuries of being tolerated but never respected. Humanity had turned its back, and now it was moving forward with a speed and confidence that terrified the rest of the galaxy. But behind the curtain of Earth's calm, there were cracks. Captain Mirhan stood in the war room of Olympus Station, high above Mars, as Admiral Sato briefed a cluster of leaders, engineers, and shadow project directors. "They've deployed listening satellites near Tavern," Sato said, gesturing at the holographic display. "3 of them, camouflaged, but we picked up faint subquantum drift. They're conquered, no doubt about it. Testing us," Han muttered. "More like watching us," someone else said. Ree stepped into the room, sharp and silent. The talking stopped instantly. He looked at the projections. "Pull them. You want to shoot them down?" someone asked. "No. I want them retrieved, fully intact." Han's eyes narrowed. "That'll provoke a response." Ree nodded slowly. "Good." Within days, elite interceptor drones swept through Tavern without warning. They hacked and seized all 3 satellites, disabling them without a scratch. By the time Concord Command noticed, the devices had already been dissected in Earth's clandestine orbital labs. What the humans found wasn't just surveillance. There were kill-switch protocols embedded deep in the code. Micro-instinct AI designed to trigger weapons inside Earth space if humanity showed signs of hostile expansion. It was confirmation. The Conquered had never planned to keep the peace. They'd planned to contain Earth, then erase it when the time came. Ree stood before the United Earth Assembly the next day, transmitted across every colony and station. His voice was calm, steady, but hard as steel. "They wanted us weak, wanted our minds, our labor, our genius, but not our voice, not our place. And when we refused to be tools, they built a plan to end us. I say this with clarity. We will not wait for their war. We will not kneel for their mercy. From this day forward, Earth is not part of the Conquered. We are not their ally. We are not their subject. We are something else entirely." He raised his eyes toward the camera. His voice dropped low. "We are the unknown, the wild, the dangerous. We are human." The message shook the galactic network like a seismic wave. Hundreds of Conquered member worlds watched in silence. The rest whispered in panic. On some neutral planets, revolts began. Smaller species who had long been ignored started asking for the same autonomy. "If Earth can stand alone, why can't we?" they asked. And all the while, humanity kept growing. Project Omen had reached full deployment. Entire fleets of stealth ships, invisible to standard sensors, now drifted in deep space. Their destinations unknown, their capabilities unmeasured. On Europa's ice-covered surface, a new type of life form, hybrid human-AI constructs, had begun operation. Self-evolving, self-replicating, built for deep colonization, built for environments no other species could touch. But the most terrifying revelation came from within Jupiter's shadow. A singularity array, experimental, once forbidden, now fully functional. The first artificial micro-black hole generator in known history, and Earth had built it in silence. When the Conquered received confirmation through terrified informants, it wasn't anger that followed. It was fear, real, deep, existential fear. Because in their arrogance, they had assumed Earth would collapse without them. But Earth wasn't collapsing. It was ascending, and it wasn't looking back. It began with a flicker, a faint pulse of gravity that rippled through space like the heartbeat of a god. Across half a dozen Conquered monitoring stations, alarms screamed. Automated systems flagged the event as impossible. Probes scrambled to triangulate the source. Scientists worked around the clock, trying to decipher what had just happened near the orbit of Ganymede, deep within human space. What they discovered sent chills through every High Council chamber in the galaxy. The singularity generator had been activated, only for 12 seconds, but it was enough. Entire sensor arrays shorted. Temporal drift in the surrounding regions spiked by milliseconds. Local gravity signatures collapsed and then corrected themselves. It was like space itself had flinched. And then the signal vanished. Not a weapon. Not a declaration. A demonstration. A whisper from Earth, "We can, and we will if we must." Lechtel's voice broke as he shouted across the conquered war chamber. "They have crossed every threshold. They are tampering with reality itself. This is no longer defiance. It's heresy against physics itself." The Verilian ambassador, a silver-skinned, empathic creature, leaned forward, unblinking. Perhaps they are not breaking reality. Perhaps they are evolving beyond ours. The room descended into chaos. Some species called for preemptive war. Others begged for negotiation, for a last attempt at peace. But fear had taken root too deeply. The conquered no longer spoke with one voice. It trembled like a fractured empire. On Earth, Re stood before a new council. No longer diplomats or generals, but a hybrid leadership of humans, AI, and enhanced thinkers. The Continuum Assembly, their purpose, to guide humanity's expansion without limitation. He addressed them calmly, as he always did. But this time there was something else in his tone. A finality. A warning. "They will strike soon," he said. "They've lost control. And in their panic, they'll do what all empires do. Lash out." Captain Han, now head of Earth's Frontier Defense Directorate, didn't flinch. "Then let them come. We're not the ones hiding behind peace treaties anymore." From the orbital forges above Mercury, the Prometheus Lance began final assembly. A human-built dreadnought, 3 kilometers long, coated in metamaterial plating, and armed with weapons that had no name in alien languages because no alien had ever imagined them. From Pluto's under-ice bunkers, fleets began rising, unregistered, unnamed, unrestricted. Re gave a simple command: "Do not fire first. But if fired upon, leave no second shot." And then the first shot came. A conquered patrol fleet, under unclear orders, violated Earth's Mars perimeter. Their captains claimed it was a navigational error. The intent didn't matter. The humans responded. In 12 seconds, 7 conquered vessels gone. Not destroyed, not even hit by conventional fire. They were simply no longer there, wiped clean by a local gravity lens that crumpled their space-time vector like paper. The Conquered's high command didn't even release a statement. For the first time in its long, boastful history, it said nothing. Because it had seen the truth. Humanity didn't fear war. They had become something war feared. Across neutral systems, new flags were raised. Simple banners of black with a single white line through the middle. The line Earth had crossed. Colonists wore them on their sleeves. Smugglers painted them on their ships. It became a symbol of rebellion, of freedom, of something raw and untamed. Humanity was no longer a species. They were an idea, a storm you could not reason with, a force that no longer negotiated. And in the silence left by the conquered retreat, Earth's ships began moving, not to conquer, but to vanish into uncharted space, into systems the conquered didn't even know existed. They didn't send warnings. They didn't seek permission. They just left. The galaxy watched, and this time, they didn't try to stop them. Because they understood the new truth, humanity hadn't walked away from the table. They had flipped it and built their own. In the stars beyond the galactic rim, where starlight thins and maps end, Earth's children spread like wildfire. Not as invaders, not as diplomats, but as pioneers unbound. The New Terra Initiative, once a whispered dream, had become a living network. Humanity's great scattering. Thousands of ships broke away from known space, carving paths through dark nebulae, slipstream tunnels, and wormholes only Earth's experimental AI could track. Colonies bloomed in systems the conquered had dismissed as uninhabitable. Barren rocks were reshaped, frozen gas giants terraformed, black dwarf stars harvested for their ghost-like particles. Every colony ran independently, governed not by orders from Earth, but by their own evolving systems of AI-assisted councils. Democracy in some, efficiency-driven computation in others. Humanity wasn't just multiplying. It was mutating, philosophically, politically, spiritually. And behind them, a trail of awe and terror. Alien ships occasionally followed, scouts, spies, the curious and the desperate. Most never returned. Some did, only to speak of things they couldn't explain. Moons that moved like they were alive. Machines that whispered in languages the aliens couldn't translate. Colonists who had rewritten their own biology with calm precision. And fleets, always fleets, waiting in the shadows, invisible, watching. No borders, no broadcasts, just silence. A silence the conquered could no longer penetrate. On Earth, Ree Callahan prepared to disappear. He stood in the chamber of the Orrery, a subterranean AI complex beneath the Alps where Earth's brightest posthumans and recursive minds met to plan humanity's deepest journeys. The next phase was ready. Project Ashen Sky. The relocation of the Continuum Assembly into non-Euclidean space, beyond conquered comprehension. "We leave tonight," said one of the sentience architects, a woman whose mind had been merged with predictive quantum fields. "Time will move differently there. The longer we stay, the less human we'll become." Ree nodded, eyes heavy. That was always the plan. Captain Han, now mostly neural link and firewalls, remained at Earth's core. She would not be going. She had a different task: to defend what remained of the cradle should the conquered grow bold enough to try again. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked him quietly as they stood beside the gravity well portal, flickering like a wand in space. "Want has nothing to do with it," Ree replied. "This isn't about Earth anymore. It's about the idea of Earth, the version of humanity that no longer fits this galaxy." She gave him a tight nod. "Then go. We'll keep the fire burning here." And with that, Ree stepped through. The portal closed behind him. Back in conquered space, panic was giving way to paranoia. Species once loyal to the Central Order now questioned everything. If Earth could fake weakness for centuries, they asked, what else have they hidden? Whispers spread that humans had already seeded spies in the conquered's highest ranks, genetically altered to pass as other species. That human AI had cracked the translation matrix and was quietly rewriting entire legal systems from the shadows. That some human colonies had found something older, deeper, far beneath the stars, and were no longer truly human at all. And what terrified the conquered most was that it might be true. Lectal had aged beyond recognition. His once smooth skin had cracked into scales of silver despair. The conquered no longer obeyed him. Its members were fractured, distracted, arguing over treaties that meant nothing in a world where humans ignored them. In a rare private address, Lectal recorded his final thoughts, not for the public, not for the conquered, but for the record. "We believed they needed us, that they craved recognition, inclusion. But we never understood that we were only a mirror to them, reflecting their worst memories of subjugation, control, humiliation. We invited them to our table, then chained them to their chair. And now the chains are gone, and so are they." He paused, eyes dim. "And I fear what follows them isn't anger. It's evolution." The recording was never aired. His chambers were found empty the next day. No sign of violence, just a whisper etched into the wall in human script. "We warned you. A storm's coming, not the kind measured by stellar drift or gravitational disturbance, but the kind that reshaped civilizations, the kind that silenced empires." It began in the Varn Expanse, a conquered border sector known for its stability. 4 planets, 2 trade stations, 1 military outpost. Quiet, orderly, loyal, until the stars vanished. No explosion, no invasion, just silence. Every sensor blinked out. Every transmission ceased. A Concord response fleet arrived 23 minutes later. What they found wasn't destruction. It was emptiness. All 4 planets were still there, structures intact, stations untouched. But no life, no power, no AI. As if something had turned the universe off in that sector. As if the concept of being had been overwritten. The fleet didn't stay long. They didn't dare. On board the Resolute Dawn II, deep in human colonial space, Captain Mirhan received the encrypted stream. She studied the data, scanned the warp resonance. Then she sat back in her chair. Retriclad can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.